Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well and hope you're keeping safe. Today is the day that we are going to watch 10 craziest people who survived the impossible. Today it has been absolutely hot. Hope you've had a fantastic day today and I hope you had a great weekend and a bank holiday as the weather was absolutely superb. Hope you had a barbecue, went to the beach and did so much stuff. That's fantastic if you did. So further ado, please smash that thumbs up and subscribe button and let's crack on with the video.
When it comes to surviving the impossible, nobody is quite as lucky as Carlos Rodriguez. This is the guy who only has half a head. According to the Daily Mail, Rodriguez lost half his head after a vehicle accident involving drugs and alcohol, in which he was throttled out of the windshield and landed directly on his head on the road. It caused a massive portion of his skull to cave in, and it was a miracle he didn't die. The doctors were forced to carve off huge chunks of flesh and bone just so that he could live after the incident. Today, Carlos is still alive and in relatively good health considering he's missing most of his cranium. The images of him are shocking to say the least. His horrifying appearance went viral after mugshots were released following his arrest. Carlos has even come forward to warn kids against using drugs and alcohol, despite the fact that he still uses both substances. Carlos had his accident at only 14 years old, but it hasn't stopped him from living a normal life, aside from his alleged criminal activities. Number 9. 127 hours.
Don't use
Aron
drugs.
Ralston is one of the most famous survivors in modern history. This is the guy who kept himself alive against all odds for 6 days after a horrifying accident while mountain climbing. The story is so famous they even made a movie about it starring James Franco and directed by Danny Boyle.
Oh, I've seen that. That is fantastic. You should definitely watch that. Oh, he is a great actor. I think, yeah, it was just so good. You should definitely watch it.
127 hours, Aron remained trapped in a crevice with his arm pinned underneath a rock. And according to Aron himself, he only managed to do what was necessary to save his own life after an explosion of blind rage. For any people out there who have seen the movie, they know that Aron actually had to cut his own arm off to escape the situation.
Yeah.
After being stuck inside a narrow canyon in Utah, Aron waited as long as he could. Then, after 127 hours, Aron finally took the small knife from his multi-toolkit and amputated his own arm.
Yeah.
But his escape from this gruesome and impossible situation was even more horrendous than you might imagine. Apparently, Aron's arm had been in the process of decomposing. This meant that his flesh was soft like room-temperature butter. Aron even claimed that when he first pierced his skin with his multi-tool knife, a putrid gas escaped. But not only did he have to cut his own arm off, he first had to break his arm clean in half by flailing against the rock which trapped him. Once his arm was snapped in half, Aron was able to saw through his own flesh and escape by climbing out of the canyon with one arm. What do you take with you when you go hiking to avoid this kind of situation? Do you always bring flashlights? What about a satellite phone? Or do you always make sure to walk on well-defined trails? Tell me about how you protect yourself so you never end up like Aron by leaving a comment below. The Bundy survivor. If you haven't heard of the notorious serial killer Ted Bundy, you've probably been living under a rock. And while the story of Bundy, his prison escapes, and his murders is astonishing enough, one woman actually survived a meeting with this psychopath. And her story is astonishing in and of itself. Her name is Carol DeRanche, and she narrowly survived the impossible. And she was also partially responsible for putting Ted Bundy behind bars. It all happened in the fall of 1974. At the time, Carol was only 18 years old. She was in Salt Lake City when she decided to drive to the mall and go to the bookstore. After leaving the bookstore, a random man approached her, said he was a police officer, and claimed that someone had tried to break into her car. But Carol got suspicious when she followed the man outside and saw that he was driving a Volkswagen Bug and not a patrol car. Still, this was the 1970s and Carol was a trusting person. So she got into the stranger's car and immediately knew something was wrong when the man pulled over in an unpopulated area. Carol panicked and tried to run, but the man pulled a gun and threatened to murder her. By some crazy miracle, Carol managed to fight her way out of the car and then run away. Just 4 hours later, the stranger who had tried to murder Carol killed a different woman in a fit of rage. It ended up being Ted Bundy, and Carol DeRanche ended up being his only surviving victim. Number 7. Stuck at sea.
Wow, that's crazy.
Surviving being stuck at sea is no easy thing to do.
No.
It's even harder without a boat. When Kate Henderson and Ed Cohen went on a fishing trip on a sunny Thursday afternoon, they never thought it would end so tragically. Everything was going fine until they realized the boat was taking on water. The engines had failed, there was no cell phone service to call 911, and the Mayday calls on their marine radio received no response. Thinking quickly, they gathered up as many floatable objects as they could. That way, when the boat sank just a few minutes later, they were at least able to float. Both men then managed to stay alive for 35 hours in the Gulf of Mexico. They used a strap to connect the two of them and took turns sleeping on each other's chests to try and fight off hypothermia. But eventually, a decision needed to be made. Ken Henderson was a pretty large guy and his friend was not. Ed Cohen was quite skinny and hypothermia eventually set in. By Friday afternoon, Cohen was no longer able to swim, and he was in horribly rough shape. Ken Henderson had no choice but to sever the line tying them together and then swim for help while abandoning his friend out at sea. According to the Daily News, the two men had been friends for 25 years. Ken Henderson amazingly managed to swim for help, but Ed died in the water. His body was later found by a fisherman. Number 6. Frozen woman.
I can do the sea. I can jump in the sea, have a great time in the sea, just swim, explore and stuff. But going out in the deep, deep blue... Oh, no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Just no.
A woman named Anna Bagenholm made history when she survived the impossible in May of 1999. She did it by having her body temperature drop to the lowest ever recorded in a human person. To this date, Anna is the miraculous survivor of the worst case of hypothermia in history. At the time, she had been 29 years old and studying to be an orthopedic surgeon. After work in May, she decided to go skiing. And this happened in Norway. While maneuvering around a waterfall, Anna fell headfirst into the water and got stuck between ice and rocks. She ended up struggling for 40 minutes, while her friends desperately tried to save her from the freezing waters. By the time rescuers finally got Anna out of the water, she'd been submerged for 80 minutes. She had no pulse, she had no circulation, and she looked pretty well dead. A helicopter was called, and Anna had to take a flight for over 1 hour to the nearest major hospital.
What?
And here's where the miracle comes in. According to the report from CBS News, over the span of 9 hours, a team of 100 doctors and nurses were able to warm Anna's blood and resuscitate her using special machines until her body temperature returned to normal. Anna woke up paralyzed, with her kidneys failing and her digestive system failed. But then, after 2 months of intensive care, she made a pretty solid recovery. Nerve damage ruined her hands. She had trouble writing and cooking. She couldn't ride or bike or go skiing again. But other than that, she made a miraculous recovery. Number 5. Thing record breaker. When Vesna Vulovic's airplane exploded 33,000 feet in the air, she ended up being the first and only person to fall such an outstanding distance and then survive. This happened on January 26th of 1972. Vesna had only been a flight attendant before the airplane crashed while traveling from Stockholm to Belgrade. There was an explosion in the baggage compartment that caused the aircraft to break apart in the middle of the sky. Out of all 28 passengers and crew, Vesna ended up being the only survivor. She was found in the wreckage with 2 broken legs, 3 broken vertebrae, plenty of broken ribs, a fractured pelvis, and even a fractured skull. And even though she spent a few days in a coma after the accident recovering, she miraculously made a full recovery. As for how she survived falling 33,000 feet without a parachute, well, that's still something of a mystery. One of her doctors claimed that because she had extremely low blood pressure, her heart was kept from bursting when she impacted with the side of the mountain. As for why the plane exploded, there was apparently a briefcase bomb on board that had been placed there by a Croatian separatist group trying to gain independence from Yugoslavia. Number 4. Lost in the Yukon. Helen Kleban is another woman who miraculously survived an airplane crash, except that after her plane crash, she had to spend 49 days stranded in the Yukon wilderness with no food, no gear, and plenty of injuries. It all happened in 1963 when a single-engine plane crash-landed. Helen was the only passenger on the flight, and after being knocked unconscious by the impact, she awoke to find the pilot bleeding from his head but still alive. Helen's left arm was broken. It was negative 40 degrees outside and things were looking pretty bleak. Over the next 48 days, Helen and the pilot survived in the freezing woods by eating toothpaste and other meager supplies from the plane. The pilot had his jaw shattered and his ribs crushed. And all rescue attempts by local authorities were called off after a few weeks without finding the plane. It was a complete accident that a pilot happened to fly over the clearing where Helen and the pilot were camped out. He spotted the starving survivors and came back the next day to save them. They were just days away from certain death by the time they were rescued.
Oh,
Number
wow.
3,
That's
skydiving
crazy.
without a parachute. It's never a good idea to skydive without a parachute. That probably goes without saying. In fact, I dare say it's not a great idea to skydive at all.
No.
Unless you're a bird, you probably shouldn't be jumping out of an airplane. But in any case, Lindy Harding survived the impossible when she jumped out of a plane and her parachute failed to open. She was looking straight at the ground from 8,500 feet in the air.
Nope.
It wasn't her first time skydiving either. She had jumped 9 times before.
Oh
but
my
all
God.
that experience meant nothing when her parachute was broken. She had to stare at the ground for over a mile while she raced towards the dirt like a speeding comet.
Oh,
By
wow.
some miracle of the universe, Lindy managed to survive. Even though she hit the ground at about 70 miles per hour, she was out of the hospital within 3 weeks and back in school just a few days after that. She did suffer short-term memory loss and a bit of pain, but her injuries were pretty minor. It was an absolute fluke that her body didn't shatter on impact, making her one of the luckiest women in existence.
Wow.
Dangerous animal in Africa.
Yep.
The chances of surviving a giant hippopotamus biting your face are usually 0. And the truth is, hippos kill more people every year than lions. Even lions are scared of hippos. But for some unknown reason, a man named Paul Templar was attacked 3 times by a hippopotamus, and he's still alive. He was tackled out of his canoe by a hippo while working in Zimbabwe back in 2015. Miraculously, Paul escaped the hippo's powerful jaws with most of his body still intact, though the incident did cause him to lose an arm. But the attack was far more violent than you could possibly imagine.
They seem to be really nice and cute and like, oh, they look so lovely, but they are evil bastards. They are evil bastards. I can't believe they actually kill humans more than lions do. I never knew that. I never knew that at all.
Imagine. The animal assaulted him 3 times. It first tackled him off his canoe like some kind of torpedo. The hippopotamus then clamped its jaw down on the man and ripped his arm off and spat him out. And when Paul tried to swim away, the hippo grabbed him by his feet and began to swing him around like a dog with a chew toy. The hippo then retreated, leaving Paul laying on the grass with one arm missing and at least 38 bites on his body. He was grossly injured, and doctors thought he would lose additional limbs. It was a miracle that Paul made a full recovery. Number 1, cut in half by a train. In 2006, Truman Duncan survived being run over by a train. And this is one of the most miraculous things anyone has ever survived. Duncan had been working at the rail yards in Texas when he slipped on the tracks while riding on the front of a train car that was bound for the repair dock. Duncan slipped, landed on the tracks, and then tried to outrun the train. He wasn't faster than the train, though.
Why?
He was swiftly pulled underneath it. According to Duncan himself, it just felt like a monster. The train cut Duncan in half. It dragged him 75 feet and ripped apart his lower body, leaving just one leg attached by a single muscle. He then managed to reach his cell phone on his mangled hip and call 911. He was conscious enough, despite having been cleaved in half, that he then made a phone call to his family. After getting emotional and hanging up the phone, Duncan waited for paramedics to arrive while willing himself not to die. Today, Duncan still works at the rail yard. He's missing half his body, but at least he's alive. Which of these people do you think was the luckiest survivor? Let me know your thoughts.
Oh my God, that's just horrifying. Wow, just that memory in my head right now. Cut in half by a train. Still able to call your family while you're basically cut in half. Oh God, that's horrifying. But yeah, please let me know what you think out of those between 1 and 10 people, which is the worst. So yeah, if you really did enjoy this and pretty much learned something out of it, I actually did. I learned about the hippopotamus, if that's called. Yeah, they actually kill more than lions do. They kill humans. I was thinking, oh my God, that's just scary. So yeah, when I see one, I probably won't say, oh, that's really, really nice. Oh, let's go and pet it. No, I'll be on the flipping other side of the zoo or the other side of the place thinking, I'm not touching that. It will kill me. But yeah, so yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please smash that thumbs up and subscribe button. And take care, guys, and hope you have a fantastic week and a fantastic weekend. Goodbye.
We make bad mistakes, they come back my way.